If you can keep me, I wanna stay here with you forever. I've got my
What is the Schomburg Center? To me, it is home. The place where we come to see who we really are, not just somebody else's reflection of who we are.
The Schomburg Center is a place of culture, it's a place of history, it's a place of knowledge.
The Schomburg Center, to me, is a repository of all of the things that has documented our sense of worth as a people.
For me, that means that it is a place of immense power.
The Schomburg Center is a public research library and a cultural institution
for the study of the Pan-African world.
It is perhaps the best in the world.
My Schomburg Center is Arturo Alfonso Schomburg.
Arturo Schomburg said, Black history and culture and intellect exists at a time when most people didn't believe that. He collected those evidences, and that became the beginning of the collection.
And it has expanded and has grown to where it is now a world-class institution.
It holds over 10 million items.
There's no parallel anywhere that brings to light what we as people of color have done, what we continue to do.
Black culture is all of culture. The universals that animate everyone's life happen here for all people.
The Schomburg, for me, is one of the center pillars of Harlem. When I started the journey of finding out about Red Rooster and Harlem, the very first place I went to was the Schomburg.
Researchers from around the world come and use what we have here.
I could not have written just about any of the books that I've written without the Schomburg Center's archives, resources.
The Schomburg Center is much more than a library. We encourage lifelong learning and exploration.
The Junior Scholars Program is a Saturday program with students from 5th grade to senior year in high school to help them learn about Black history and culture.
Learning about my history is important because it teaches me who I am.
The Schomburg Junior Scholars Program is going to do nothing but uplift them.
So many talented and brilliant people have walked the corridors of this amazing institution over the years. From Octavia Butler to Toni Morrison and James Baldwin, Ella Fitzgerald, Alvin Ailey, and Harry Belafonte, who graced the stage in this room of the American Negro Theater.
This place evokes great memories. It was a gift to us in our community to really try to find that space to reflect expressions of Black experience. I just knew that the environment and what I saw these young African Americans doing was a place I needed to be.
What is my Schomburg Center? I'm standing here at the Cosmogram, which underneath holds the ashes of the poet Langston Hughes. On the evening when this Cosmogram was dedicated, people began to empty out of the auditorium. A jazz trio struck up, and to my amazement, Amira Baraka went over and asked Maya Angelou for a dance. And they started to dance on top of the Cosmogram, on top of the ashes of Langston Hughes, and I felt what a fitting way to kiss the memory of Langston.
The Schomburg Center is a research institute and a library, but it's so much more than that.
There's something going on every day.
So many amazing people come here to talk about their creative craft, to share what inspires them. The Schomburg Center's collections help to tell stories even beyond our walls.
The Schomburg Center is here in this exhibition at MoMA, One-Way Ticket, Jacob Lawrence's Migration Series. We depend on the resources of the Schomburg to enable us to tell this story. Thinking about the implications of the past on the present is absolutely crucial for understanding the next steps, understanding what we have to do to go forward.
We today have the responsibility of making sure that new artists and activists, new scholars and poets know that this place continues to be a resource and a source of inspiration for the work that we must continue to do.
The Schomburg Center is knowledge.
The Schomburg Center, to me, is education.
The Schomburg Center is home, it is family, it is foundational.
The Schomburg Center is inspiration.
The Schomburg is with me in everything that I do.
Community, inside and out.
The Schomburg Center is us.
The Schomburg Center is you, and we invite each and every one of you to find your Schomburg Center.
Good evening. My name is Novella Ford. I'm the Associate Director of Public Programs and Exhibitions here at the Schomburg Center for Research in Black Culture, and we are coming to you live from our Langston Hughes Auditorium, where we wish we could have you here, but soon you will be able to join us for in-person programming. As you know, through our programs, we have film screenings, exhibitions, performances, and engaging conversations where we explore historical and contemporary narratives that continue to shape our nation and the world. Before we turn to tonight's program, let me tell you a little bit about what we have on view for your next visit to the Schomburg Center. The popular media gallery exhibition Showing Out Fashion in Harlem is up through Thursday of this week, so this is your last week to be able to see that pop-up exhibition. And it explores the pioneering work of Lois K. Alexander Lane, who was the founder of the Harlem Institute of Fashion and the Black Fashion Museum, and she shared our mission to ensure that Black people were seen and recognized for their contributions to society. We also have two incredible exhibitions that opened in 2020 before the pandemic that are still going strong. One is titled Traveling While Black, A Century of Pleasure and Pain and Pilgrimage, which examines a history of travel from those who found themselves exiled in their own country to the pilgrims and pleasure seekers of our time. The other exhibition is Subversion in the Art of Slavery Abolition, which highlights the several ways that abolitionists engaged with the arts to agitate for enslaved people's liberty in the 18th and 19th centuries. While we eagerly anticipate your return to the Schomburg Center for Public Programs, we hope that you will continue to enjoy our virtual programs. Coming up in October, we have a showcase of 13 new generation African poets, which will be hosted by Kwame Dawes and Chris Abani. Of course, we have our first Thursdays, Conversations in Black Freedom Studies, and we have the Lapidus Center for Historical Analysis of Transatlantic Slavery at the Schomburg Center. It is holding its virtual conference, Pandemic Legacies, Health, Healing, and Medicine in the Age of Slavery and Beyond. And that's taking place Wednesday, October 6th through Friday, October 8th. Of course, you can find all of these programs and more online at schomburgcenter.org. Now, I'll give you a throwback virtual program that you can visit that connects very well with tonight's program. In October of 2014, Charles Blow was in conversation with former Schomburg director Khalil Gibran Muhammad to discuss his debut memoir, Fire Shut Up in My Bones. He was described as the most innovative and respected journalist who found his voice by coming to terms with his painful past through this memoir. Tonight, well, one day after its historic debut at the Metropolitan Opera, Grammy Award-winning jazz musician and composer Terence Blanchard's adaptation of Charles Blow's memoir, Fire Shut Up in My Bones, featuring a libretto by filmmaker Casey Lemons, returns to the Schomburg for a conversation about fire as an opera. That conversation will include baritone Will Lieberman, who plays the iconic role of Charles. It also includes a conversation with co-director James Robinson. We have a wonderful piece that was done with Camille A. Brown, who is James Robinson's co-director and choreographer, and hopefully you'll get to see a little piece of that choreography in this piece that has been produced. I want to say thank you to the team at the Metropolitan Opera for making tonight's conversation and performances possible. You can learn more about FIRE as well as about the Metropolitan Opera at metopera.org. I have to tell you, last night I watched the simulcast of the opening night at Marcus Garvey Park in Harlem, and whatever was felt inside of the Opera Theater was certainly felt in Harlem. I would say that there was not only a sense of pride, of course, a pride in the first Black composer to have an opera at the Met in its 138 years, the first Black librettist to have work performed at the Met, the first Black artist to direct a Met production, the first. What I can tell you is that in Harlem, the folks, the community loved the first, but they also felt seen. And I love Terence Blanchard's conversation around this idea of the first. One of the questions the Times asked Terence was if it was difficult to cast a full show's worth of operatically trained Black singers, and he answered, "They are already out there. they don't get covered and they don't get the work. And being here at the Schomburg Center, I really have the pleasure of meeting leaders of organizations that are constantly doing this work of introducing the community and the world to incredible performers and writers and talents. And so I have to shout out the Harlem Chamber Players, whose concerts here introduced us to the work of living composers like Adolphus Hailstork and Jeffrey Scott, and the work of composers from our history like William Grant Still and Philippa Schuyler and Chevalier de St. George's and Samuel Coleridge Taylor and Florence Price and Margaret Bonds, composers that I've learned about through organizations like the Harlem Opera Theater, and voices that I've heard in this intimate theater and read about in our archives. All of that is why the Schomburg exists and why we get to partner with organizations like the Met, but also partner with organizations in the community that continue to do the work. So while it has been an incredible week, the work still continues, and we are so pleased that we get to have this conversation tonight. Moderating our conversation this evening is Michael Dinwiddie, who is a dramatist whose work has been produced in New York in regional and educational theater, and he's also the associate professor in the Gallatin School of Individualized Study at New York University. And while I bring him out, I want to also nod that the last time we had him on this stage, he was moderating a conversation around A Soldier's Play, which shout out to David Allen Greer, who won a Tony Award this week. So again, I say it has been an incredible week and a wonderful homecoming. Please welcome to the stage now Michael Dinwiddie and Charles Blow.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you, Novella. Hi, Charles. So good to see you.
You too.
Wow, you're back here.
I'm back here.
You were here in 2014.
I can't get enough of
having a great time. You know, there's one thing that's different this time.
Yes.
I have a copy of your book right here.
Oh, there you go.
Don't worry, I won't ask you to autograph it because I marked it all up as I read it. So folks know you from your work with the New York Times. They know your work with your books. But I want them to get to know you a little bit better, to know your personality a little better. So are you ready?
Okay.
So I want you to tell them the story of when you got your first job in Shreveport as a journalist.
In Shreveport?
Yeah.
Oh, so I was, I thought that I was going to be a politician, so I had majored in English and pre-law, then an English professor convinced me to major in journalism pre-law just because I didn't go to law school. And then I realized I was not going to go to law school.
Right.
And I had I had concentrated in visual communication because I thought it would be easy and I could go to all the parties.
Right.
And I could still keep my scholarship. And then I realized I'm about to graduate with a degree in visual journalism, and I panicked. And I said, okay, now how am I going to make this work? And this lady had come on a career day, and she had, she was not the happiest, nicest person. And she told us, the starting salary for a journalist, a writer, a newspaper is, I don't know what the number was, I think it was tiny, like $18,000. And I remember literally getting, excusing myself, and going to the bathroom throwing up. Because I was like, I cannot be poor. I can't go to college and then leave and be poor.
Well, wait a minute, why couldn't you be poor? Why not?
That was not my ministry.
Okay, you had been poor.
I had been poor my whole life. I was trying to graduate.
Okay, it's time for something else.
I was trying to graduate out of that, right? Okay. So, and then I gathered myself and I said, okay, there's nothing you can do about it. This is what you're in, and you just have to go into it and try to be the best at it and just hope that success will come. And I said, it was junior at that point. Okay. So I never had an internship because I thought I was going to go to law school. So I just said, okay, I have to get an internship. Local news, the closest real newspaper was Shreveport Times. Talk to them. No, we don't have any internships. Oh, no, you have to give me an internship. So I would look at the newspaper. I did graphic design at the time. I would see this needed a chart, that needed something. I'd make it. I sent them a letter every single day with a note saying, you should have done this with this story, here it is, until they agreed to give me an internship. Just don't believe in taking no for an answer. Also, I was desperate, and I needed an internship.
Well, the rest of the story that I think is really spectacular, I'm going to get us to the story of how you got your first front page article, and then how you got to the New York Times. So first, the first front page article, the drawing, the reading about I'll let you tell the story.
Oh, you're talking about, okay, so I was in the newsroom. I had this philosophy. My boss would never see me come in, and he'd never see me leave.
You're here.
So I would always be there before when he got there, and I'd stay until he left. I don't care what I had to do. I don't care what he was doing. You're not gonna see me walk out of here. So I would get there early, and he realized I would get there early, and he didn't want to go to the news meeting, so he let me go. He said, well, you just go. I said, I'm an intern, but whatever, I'll do whatever you want me to do. And I show up, and this family has, just tragic, it's cold. They have put a gas-powered generator underneath the house. It's these, southern houses, just slats, and so the fumes from the gas, they're sleeping. They're trying to be warm at night, and the fumes seep up into the house, kills everyone in the house. And I realized this is happening. They come through the newsroom and say, and I'm the only person there. I said, okay, I have to figure out how this happened. And so I go to the scene, and all my reporting, skills kick in from college. I remember I was a journalism major. And so I just do all the things, I realized this is a suburb. This house is just like the next house. So I go over to the lady next door and say, listen, have you ever been to that house over there? She said, yes. I said, is it the same as yours? She said, all these houses are the same. I said, can I walk through your house and make a diagram of your house so I can see what the house looked like? So I did that. Right. Went back over to the cops because they had the wire. I said, so where's the body? He said, how did you get this diagram? I said, don't worry about that. Just where are the bodies? Yeah. And so we did that, and I went to find out what kind of generator. I went, found the generator place, and the guy told me how it worked, and we started it up, and I made this thing, and I realized in that moment that I could marry the skills that I was learning in journalism to this kind of design and art world, and that I would have a particular skill that in that moment, for a brief period of time, was something that the journalism world really desperately needed. And I, randomly, not even wanting to be in this world, would have that skill set. And so that was like a spark moment for me.
So that was your first front page?
It was the first big thing on the front of the Shreveport Times.
That's great.
Yes.
And we'll do the other story. We'll do the other times later. Okay. I thought it'd be a great segue into who you are, how you think, and how you go after the opportunities as they come. And I think that was really wonderful. So, you got an opera now. You had a book you wrote, now there's an opera that's based on your life. And you've seen it. What does it feel like for you?
It's a otherworldly, out-of-body experience. It is hard, and probably good that I don't let it sink in too much because, make me crazy. But also, I have always thought of it as a separate art form and also as a separate thing. That, that Terence and Cassie were, that I had a framework and they were grafting things onto this framework that were
Blanchard and Cassie.
Yes. And they were creating something on top of a framework. Someone asked me this the other day, and I was like, I'm sure the guy who designed the Campbell soup can thought he did a great job, and it's great. It actually is a great design. But he can't really take credit for what Andy Warhol did with it. Because it's a new thing, it's new art. And I think, I try to think of the opera in that way, that this is something that they created, but I can see the inspiration of my story.
They created it from a beautiful, beautiful lyrical text.
Yes.
And so they had a lot to work with. And one of the things that I think is really important that's captured is the love you had for your mother.
Yes.
And the ways in which she shaped your life and the ways in which she protected you.
Yes.
You were a different kind of child. Yes. That's a good way to say it.
Yes.
And you're still a different kind of person.
Oh, I'm still very different.
Amen. Okay, well, hey, we're in the right moment of different, okay? You know what I'm saying? But I remember you talking about your 4th grade teacher.
Yes.
And how Miss Collins was the first to make you really understand.
So I changed everybody's name in the book. So so it's so far out. And now she's passed away now. God bless her soul. But her name is actually Miss Thomas.
Okay.
And she was this little firecracker of a woman with like really thin lips, but she drew them bigger. Like something. And she was from South Louisiana, a very fair-skinned woman, but she was very much invested in us. Like everybody in schools, like all these black teachers were just invested in us. And I remember, the first day of school I got there, and I'm the new kid, because I gone to school where my mother taught, which is another town over. And so when my mother finally got the job back in our hometown, I could go to the hometown school. But I had never gone to my own town school, so these people I grew up were next door neighbor. I didn't even know them. So I'm a stranger in my own town in the school.
And a stranger in your life.
Yes.
I mean, really on every level.
On every level.
On every by level. Yourself.
And I feel like I'm shrinking and disappearing. And she gives a test the first day to kind of assess our skills in math. And I'm just a ball of nerves, and I just put my head down and I do all the answers, and I pick it up and take it to her, and I didn't realize I was the first person turning in. And she said, "Oh, you're already finished?" And this is not PC now, we didn't know better then, but she says, "Oh, we're gonna call you Speedy Gonzalez." And she says, "Come here." And she grabs me and hugs me to grade the paper. And she says, "Oh my God, you're so smart." And like I never had a teacher embrace me. I had never had heard affirmations from a teacher, ever. Like, it's crazy to think that, but when the year before that, I was struggling so much psychologically. The teachers had moved, they had 3 levels of class: advanced, regular, slow.
Right.
They had put me in the slow class for a day. My mother was like, I don't know what's wrong, but I know he's not slow.
Exactly.
And so they moved me back to the regular class. But that was my sense of the structure, was that they were housing all the black kids in the slow class. That's what I saw when I walked into that room. And so when I walk into this space and all the kids are black, and the teacher, and she embraces me, and she tells me that I'm smart, and I am good, and I am fast. And I just thought in that moment, like, I always want to hear her say that, and I will always be smart.
And what I love about that is that brings us right into what the idea of the opera is, of this child trying to figure out how to be embraced, how to be accepted, how to be
seen.
Exactly. So this little boy who, I love it when I got to see the dress rehearsal, which was wonderful, and the little boy just skips along all the time. And there are moments in the book and in the opera where the idea of how he walks and how he presents himself is considered not cool. So fire shut up in my bones is always coming out of his bones in a way that reveals who he is, even when he doesn't know that he's revealing himself.
Even the title is very interesting because we struggled over it, like what to call the book. And there's so many biblical references embedded in the text that most people never catch, but I hid them all in there. But Jeremiah was what they used to call the whining prophet. If you read Jeremiah, he's just whining from start to finish. Like, man, just do it already. Preach. And what he's saying in that passage is, I really don't want to do this. Every time I do it, they mock me, they whatever. And I'm trying not to release this thing. But when I try to hold it in, I can't, because it feels like a fire shut up in my bones. And so that, to me, captured what the story was, which was, you may try your best to repress a truth, but you cannot, because it hurts. It's literally painful. And until you release it, it will feel like a fire shut up in your bones.
One of the things that was fascinating to me in the story was how you tried in different times to release it and find it. So you become very religious at a certain point. You find Jesus.
I wasn't trying to release it, though. I was trying to stamp it out.
Oh, okay.
Right, I was trying to put out the fire. I wasn't trying to release it. Right? And so I would go all through these iterations trying to figure out, is there something that I can do that will quell this part or silence this part of me that the world tells me is a deformity? And I do all these things to say, can this make it be quiet? Can this make it go away? And none of it can make it go away because it's an intrinsic part of me. And only as I, in the end, come to accept that you are not broken, that you are not deformed, that there's nothing deficient about you, that this is you made in the image of God and nature and whatever. And once you accept that, which is not an easy thing for some people to do, particularly in some cultures, and particularly mine. But it is the only option to be honest. It is the only way to be brave. It is some people look at this way of accepting yourself and say it makes you less of a man. And I say there is no way to be a real and whole man and be a liar.
Mm-hmm. Well, one of the things that you make very clear is that affection, caring, love was something that you really craved as a little boy. You were in a loving family. You had loving brothers, loving mother, but no one's saying, I love you, no one's hugging you or anything like that. So when you tell the story of the teacher, I really get it. And the way you described your father in the book, I thought it was really great. You said his crime and his cruelty were the withholding of affection, not out of malice, but out of blind indifference, which I think a lot of us share that with our fathers of how do you parent, and so you have 3 children. And so I'm wondering, the experiences that you had in life, how do you make sure that you're shaping a life for them, with you, that gives them all those things?
Right. Yeah, I think people don't always understand that their love language may not be what the other person needs to hear, right? So I use my life and whatever I felt like I was missing to make sure that when I was crafting a life for them, that they didn't miss those exact same things. Right. That doesn't mean that my children look back at my life and say, oh, dad was the perfect dad. But it does mean that, like, if I knew that there were moments where I would like to have said something, didn't have the courage, the language, the space to do it, I created in my house a space. My office was, we called it the safe space. Mm-hmm. You can come here, cry, yell, scream. Everything stays in here unless you have been hurt or somebody else is about to be hurt or have been hurt. Everything else, all your emotions, you can be angry at me. You can do whatever you need to do because you need to have a space to release it.
And what we find in our opera, Fire Shut Up in My Bones, is the release, the finding of that. And we're at a moment now where we really will have a wonderful aria from the first act. It's going to be performed by Will Liverman, and he's going to come up and give it to us, and he will be accompanied by, and I will find his name, Pagern, Mr. Pagern. What is it, the first name?
Brian Wagner.
Brian Wagner. Yeah, let me get it right. Okay, good. Let's get it right.
Tears from a warmer place, from another time, from a boy who couldn't cry. I never thought it would come out, but here it is. But here they are, tears of anger and shame. A banner of pain on my way to kill a man. Rusty pistol in my hand, a gun my mother gave me just in case. But mama's gun couldn't keep me safe in a walled-up place. In another time, the boy who couldn't cry is crying now. And someone must die. Interstate 20, I've roamed this lonely road 1,000 times, but never so fast as with murder on my mind. A voice on the phone. What's going on, boy? What's going on? Like nothing has happened, like everything was fine. Shame held down too long, but betrayal doesn't die. Scratching to get up, churning, boiling to get out. Now here it is, now here they are, tears of rage and revenge. And someone must die. Bullets, blood, and death, bullets, blood, and death. Prepare to die, motherfucker. Prepare to die. And maybe the part of me I despise will die with you.
Beautiful. Amazing. Really beautiful. That was Tears of a Walled-Off Place from Act 1, the aria. And so now that brings us into the opera, and we're going to introduce Mr. Terence Blanchard. and the composer for the opera, and Mr. James Robinson. Welcome, welcome.
Thank you.
I want to welcome you both on, and it feels so far away, but I know that we're close, so you know what I mean. And James, you came all the way from St. Louis for this premiere, so can you talk about how you and Terence started to work together? And I know this is your second collaboration, so talk a little bit about that, and then I'm going to ask Terence a few questions, very personal questions.
Okay, sure. Well, I became artistic director at Opera Theater of St. Louis in 2009, and one of the things that I really wanted to do was to create a space where we could do a lot of new operas. And there had been a plan afoot to collaborate with Jazz St. Louis in St. Louis, so we called Gene Dobbs Bradford, who's the artistic director at Jazz St. Louis, and said, hey, what's this jazz opera collaboration? He said, well, you know, we're not sure what we can do. And I said, well, can you give me some names of composers that I might approach? So Gene gave me a list of about 5 names, and the name that I knew more than anybody was Terence's, because I'd known his film work for, you know, Spike Lee movies that he had done, and also his album, A Tale of God's Will, the Hurricane Katrina album, is, you know, one of my desert island albums, and I thought, wow, here's somebody whose music is so haunting, and who really has, you know, very strong dramatic instincts, which I thought was going to be key to producing a work for the stage. So we got in touch with Terence, and I met Terence for breakfast one morning, and
Do you have beignets?
Pardon me? No, it was in New York.
Oh, it was in New York.
We were here in New York.
It wasn't no. You didn't take him to your face place?
No, man, no. We were here. We were here this morning.
We were here,
New York, yeah.
here in New York, and actually, I remember the very first thing that Terence said to me when he came down, because he was a little late coming down, and he said, "Sorry, bro, 3 women, 1 bathroom." And in the hotel, so it was very, very funny. You don't remember that, but it's okay. And then we had a conversation.
A wife and 2 daughters.
Oh,
yeah.
I didn't know. I thought it was
Sorry about
opera coming here. I didn't know.
Yeah, no judgment. And no, but we started chatting, and I said, would you be interested in creating an opera with us? After Terence realized that I wasn't drunk and I was really, I was dead serious about it. So we embarked on a collaboration. His first opera was called Champion, based on the life of Emil Griffith, the boxer. And it was a huge hit.
Bisexual boxer, right?
Absolutely, yeah. And a fascinating story. And on the opening night in St. Louis, it was a tremendous success. I found Terence in a weakened state and said, hey, how about doing a second opera for us? So he said, sure. And so we've been collaborating now for about a dozen years, and it's been one of, I mean, Terence is, a dear friend, but he's also an artist I have great respect for and love working with, and that's how all of this came to be.
So you pulled him out of his comfort zone. You pulled him out of the Grammy Awards, the 6 Grammys. You pulled him out of the movies.
Yeah.
You pulled him onto the stage for an opera. For the first time at the Met, an opera composed by an African-American, 138 years of history with no African-American composer. And so, Terence, I want to know, where did you get your first opera lessons?
Wow. It's hard to answer that because it probably goes back to my father. My father loved opera, and he was an amateur baritone. So, he would always play opera in the house all the time. I always laugh because I can still see those R.C. Victor records, man, with the plastic sleeves. They were like pristine. We weren't allowed to touch those at all. But when he would put them on, man, he would sit in the front and just sing with all of these recordings, and at the time, I used to think it was strange. because I didn't know anybody else's parents who did this. You know what I mean? You go to other people's houses, man, their dad's sitting there watching a ball game, you know, doing something else. You know, I come home, my dad is sitting at the piano, you know, with a piece of music. He was a baritone, and he'd be playing a tenor part, singing his part, or you know, he would have PBS on, watching something, and if he saw me, he'd go, "Come in, sit down, sit down, sit down." You know, all of that noise y'all play. Look, this is music. This is real music. You know, I used to hear this all the time. So it probably started then, you know, but obviously with me wanting to be a jazz musician, my career going that route, it was such a interesting turn of events to have this guy come over and ask me to write an opera. And I'm like, who are you and where are you from, you know? But the experience with them, and I say this all the time, it couldn't have happened with a better group of people because they demystified the entire thing for me, and they just literally stepped me through the process and talked to me about it. I remember when we did Champion, the first one, reading the libretto was fine, but Jim thought I should hear it spoken. So he hired a bunch of actors, you know, in New York. And, sorry, this thing keeps rubbing. He hired a bunch of actors in New York and had them just read the libretto. And I recorded it, you know, and that's when I started to get this sense about reading and rhythm, you know, in
The
terms
inflections, the sound, the
Yes.
rhythm of what people would speak and all
Yes,
that. That's really,
yes. And that became the basis of how I would try to create the music for the opera. And after that, then we would have these workshops, and he always tells a funny story about it, so I'm gonna let him tell it, but we had these workshops with these students, you know, and the students were well-meaning, you know, but they were very diligent in their approach to, yes.
You mean syncopation that wasn't exactly...
Well, the syncopation was kind of there, but it was so there that all of the other part of the music just seemed to fly out the window. So, you know, and I guess he just saw the look on my face, man, because I'm sitting there going, okay, so, all right, this is what's going on. And he pulled me aside, he goes, hey man, listen, this is not what it's gonna be, trust me, you know. And I kept going, okay. But then when the principals showed up, Denise Graves, Arthur Woodley, Robert Orth, and all of those people, man, it went to a whole nother place. And I was really enthused about the process. And I think, and just to say this, the reason why I accepted to do the second one is because, you know, like anything else, I guess, you know, it's the same thing for you, like writing. You have that experience and you go, okay, but I see where my deficiencies were. You know, if I get a chance, another chance, I want to try to fix this and move this around and get better at this. So that's why I accepted to do the second one, you know. And when we decided to do Charles Blow's book, man, that was just, it was a phenomenal moment because I knew there was so much in the book and in his story that it would come off the stage really well. I know he didn't see how it could.
I was going to ask Charles,
yeah.
So what happened? They called you and said, we want to turn your book into an opera, or, you know, was it good? Yeah, give him help with here. Come on, yeah, do it. I know what you want to do.
Yeah.
His mic is scraping his beard. Thank you. Yeah. No, you don't have to shave. We're all grizzly. But Charles, so thank you. Thank you, Eric. Thank you. When they called you and said, we want to turn your story into an opera.
I don't know what they were talking about. It didn't make any sense to me. I was like, I don't know how they're going to do this.
Yeah.
I think it was James, I don't know if it was a call or email, but he reached out and said that, you know, are you interested in allowing this to happen? To which I called my agent, like, what are they talking about? You know, like, you know, and then you get real practical. Is the check gonna be right? You know, like, you know, so you get real practical. So I don't know what they're talking about.
Yeah, exactly.
And then I said, okay, and my agent said he had to go and just talk to other people in the television part because they had no stage. They don't sell a lot of books to make operas, so like, there's no there's no.
You're not planning to do this again,
right? There's no like regular pipeline. So
exactly.
So we did it. He said it'll be good, and James suggested you should meet Terence, and we have. So I guess I thought we were going to fight about it or something. And I met Terence for lunch, and I was like, do it. You know what are you gonna do?
Make music out of my life.
I remember thinking, maybe I said I just thought I don't know, but it's a different thing. I had to accept that right off the bat. Right. And I just said, like, as long as it ends well and the essence is there, knock yourself up.
Okay, so one of the great things about St. Louis, I mean, it really is a music town. It's been a music town forever. I mean, I flew out many years ago to see Tremonisha.
Oh, yeah.
There, the production there. That's and right. Of course, you just did Highway 1, William Grant Still, so you have a long history.
With Will Liverman, actually.
Yes, that's right. Wonderful. So you're really making him work, huh?
Absolutely. We have him on speed dial.
Okay, so, but that's wonderful. I mean, William Grant Still. And one of the things, when I read your interview, Terence, one of your interviews, and you said, it's ridiculous that I'm the first person to come here. Yeah. I'm the first African American. There have been others in front of me. And so your acknowledgement of that, and I just want to get to some of your old time teachers like Alvin Alcorn, did I say it right?
Alvin Alcorn, but he wasn't my teacher. Alvin Alcorn was the reason why I played the trumpet.
Oh, okay.
I was in elementary school and I had been playing the piano, man, and this guy came to New Orleans and gave us a demonstration of like playing New Orleans style music, and I just remember, I'm like, the piano can't do that. I mean, with the vibrato and everything, man, and you can imagine the frustration on my father's face, man, when I went home and said I want to play the trumpet, and he just got me a piano. Bruh, that didn't go over too well in Blanchard household that night. I just stayed in my room after that, made sure the door was locked, bro.
Well, it's so funny because
you
fathers.
Can't get out of the piano.
I'm hearing a lot of father-son stuff here that's very interesting, and I want to hear about a bit of your time with Lionel Hampton. I mean, that's where you kind of went off on the road.
Well, working with Lionel, man, that was another part. I've always had these growth spurts, and it's always because, that's why I believe in mentorship. Because, man, being around those guys in that band was Curtis Fuller, Frankie Dunlap. There were a lot of great music, Paul Jeffries, Oliver Bena, great trumpet player. And they all just, like, embraced me. They used to call me Babyface Nelson at the time and call me Nelson for
Why
short.
did they call you that?
I wonder why, But back then, man, I didn't look like this. I always looked like I was 14 years old. And, but they taught me everything. They taught me how to carry myself. They talked about dignity and integrity in the business. They talked about, being able to, just not be the headache in a situation. Cover yourself. Make sure you know your music. Be on time. All of those things. And I learned all of that stuff from those guys. And then at the same time, they would always challenge me in the creative part, because they would say, look, you young guys always want to do this, but can you just, instead of playing fast, can you tell me a story without playing all of those notes? Which was a real challenge, So, and then Lionel Hampton was like, people don't understand how great that man was. You know what I mean? Because I remember we were doing a show at the Radio City Music Hall, and we were doing a sound check, and for some reason it was for like a ball or something, so it was in the lobby. And I sat at the piano and I started playing something, and Lionel, without even hesitating, just started playing with me. Didn't know the tune, but just but he could hear everything. And started playing it. And then as he started playing it, then all of a sudden it sounded like he was like way out of tune with me. I'm like, what's going on? Then I realized he started playing with what was coming over the speaker, the music that was playing in the room. Because he knew that tune, and he was just a phenomenal musician. I mean, amazing musician. I really loved being in that band because I felt like I grew immensely just by being there for a couple of years.
Yeah, I heard stories about him and going to the Gotham Hotel in Detroit and his wife Gladys managing everything and being so busy, she couldn't get her fingernails done. She couldn't get a manicure. She'd be answering the phone, and the lady trying to do her nails couldn't do it. That's really something. You made me think, when talking about Lionel, you made me think about his song Flying Home.
Oh, my God.
And I bring that up because this man had he flew on the plane a couple of times, but the moment I want to talk about is when the plane flew over you when the pledging was going on.
Yes.
I think that's a really dear thing to talk about.
Yes. Oh, you want me to explain it?
Uh-huh.
Oh, okay. So we were, the hazing thing went on and on and on. And
And I should say that's in the opera. It's part of the opera.
It's right. So it's a small part of the opera.
Yes, exactly.
But it was a huge part of the book. To the point, there was some reviewers were like, "Why does he keep going on and on? We get it." But I was just like, I couldn't make my peace with it. My part, I was playing in it, and we were another pledge session. We were out in a field, and the session was supposed to start. And one of the pledges broke and ran.
Yeah.
And I thought, there will be no cowards. And I ran behind him. And he's faster than me. He could tell he was faster than me. And he was breaking, and I was like, I'm out of breath. I can't run anymore. And as I'm giving up the run, a plane very close to us flies overhead. And I realized we are on the approach to the airport. And I thought, and all I could think was, somebody could see me. Like, they're so close. If it wasn't so dark, they could. And I thought, and it just drew me back into reality. That's the real world.
Yeah.
And what are you doing? Wow. Like, what are you doing? Chasing this kid? Like, what? And I just said, I stopped and I turned and I went back and I was like, I am done.
Yeah.
This is not okay, this is not normal, this is not what I should be doing, and I am done.
We're talking about pledging a fraternity in a campus, college campus, African-American campus, and I bring that up because that running you did, that having to go after this kid is something you were doing for yourself, trying to figure out who am I, and then in that moment you realize, I'm not this person I'm trying to create myself to be. That's what I think the opera really gives us a sense of how you developed and how you became who you wanted to be. So, gentlemen, at this moment, we're going to take a pause because Will's going to come out and Charles and Jim are going to go away for a second. And Will's going to come out to talk about the music with Terence. So, thank you very much. Come on up. Hi, Will.
Hey.
How you doing?
I'm good.
I am getting ready to get in so much trouble. I didn't know you were going to sing. Have a seat.
Yeah.
So I was going to sing to you, and I was going to sing based on what I saw some of your. All you need is love.
All you need. Oh God.
How dare I sing to an opera singer? Okay, I'm going to stop right now. But
oh God.
I just want to say that I was really. I loved what you were doing with this. It was just so incredible and so beautiful. The fact that you are now part of the history of this piece. Tell me what it's like working with Terence Blanchard.
It's terrible. I didn't like it at all.
That's what Spike said.
Terence is a genius. Yeah. And one of the first things he said that really resonated with me and with everyone was, he told us to bring back all the, musical traditions that we grew up with. For me, it was gospel.
I was going to say, I remember you talking about that,
And he really allows us to put our own voice in this music, and the freedom in that is just beautiful, because I'm still finding things, new things in this piece, and it's been an incredible journey from day one.
Well, you started at a really high point in this piece.
You start off on a 20.
You start off in I don't do too much spoiling of the story, but there's a gun in the piece, and there's a story about someone wanting to get revenge and wanting to deal with things that were done to them as a child.
Yeah.
And then trying to figure out how to get over that and what to do and what happens when you really have that opportunity.
Right.
But growing up in a place where that's how people dealt with things. And so it becomes very much a part of it. Terence, did you want to say anything about what it's like to work with this young genius?
Man, this guy is incredible.
He is. I
don't know how to explain it, but it brings me back, because my father, like I said, my father was a baritone. So when I hear his voice, it brings back a lot of memories, of my father, me being in church, because I also played in church. They tried to have me sing in church, and they heard me sing for like 5 seconds, man. They was like, okay,
You mean you don't sing the parts for your artists?
Dude, not for none of these dudes. I go to the piano. Here it is, bro. Right here. I'm not gonna do that in front of these guys. But when I first heard his voice in St. Louis when we got together to work on the piece, I was just simply amazed at the tone of his voice and the size of his voice. And when we started working here in New York on the piece, when we started talking about this whole thing about bringing our culture back to the operatic stage, they all embraced it, and I just loved what they were all trying. And throughout the month of rehearsal, you could see the discovery process going through in his mind. Because at first, I knew that they were a little reserved about it because they're so used to composers saying, this is my music and it has to be this way. Right. Well, I'm a jazz musician.
Well, you came with the jazz thing, man. I want the improv, I want the different sounds. I mean, that's what you put on the stage, too. You have the jazz, you have the blues, you have the rhythm and blues, you have everything.
Art Blakey used to tell us all the time, jazz was invented because somebody messed up. I
love that.
And my mom always says style is what you do because you couldn't figure out how you're supposed to do it.
Yeah, well, but that's been the beautiful thing about what they've been doing. They know what they're doing. These guys they're professionals. Yes. They're at the top of their game, and they know what they're doing. Now to add this other piece to it, and to see the light bulb go off in all of them. Just when we have this discussion, it's almost like an unlocking of something that's always been inside them.
Well, it's historical because it's the flow. I mean, you think back to Scott Joplin with a guest of honor, the opera he wrote in 1903, and you think that there's been this long tradition of how do we get there, what do we do? And now to be at the top of your game as an artist, to not have to wait until the end of your career to be at the Met, like Marian Anderson did, to be able to perform when you are in your prime voice and you are able to have a real career, and then to have artists who know what they're doing, who can really work in many idioms, many genres, and many styles, and really can then bring all that out. So it's a really exciting time, an exciting piece. So now tell me, what's been the biggest challenge for you with this?
For me, I think it's always been just navigating, in all the rage and emotions that Charles goes through, and to tell that story, but to, vocally deliver in a way where I can, get through it. Because there are a lot of emotional moments that really hit me personally. There are a lot of tears we had in the rehearsal process, like going through it, and even still, like on stage, when you're really in it, it's just, you're human. It just comes out of you. So it's always been just writing that line and making sure that I'm able to, still deliver what's written, but just keeping, the humanity in it. Yeah.
Terence, is there a moment that you hear that you feel it's the blend, exactly what you wanted when you were creating this piece?
Oh, there's well, first of all, there's tons. Okay. I mean, because what LaTonya is doing is amazing. What Angel Blue does on Peculiar Grace is amazing. And the scene that affects me the most is the scene between him and Angel in the last act, and
what is the scene? Set it up for us.
Well, the scene is him meeting Greta, and
Greta's a love interest.
His love interest, and then they make love. But after that, she gets up to leave, and he's saying, "Why do you have to go?" And she says, "There's something that I have to tell you." And he goes, "What is it?" And then she says, "You first." And then he says, "I love you." And then she says, "I already know that. But then tell me something else." And then he starts to tell her what happened to him as a kid, right? But then she adds, as he finishes, she says, "Well, there's a boy who believes I love only him." And he thinks that she's leaving him because of what he told her about that happened to him. And to me, that moment always gets me. It always gets me because, to think of what Charles went throughout his life and, trying to be accepted in the community, which is one of the things that I related to in this book. I've never gone through this to the degree that he's gone through it with, obviously, but, the isolation in your own community can be a devastating thing when you're trying to belong to that community. You know what I mean? And a lot of us have gone through that and felt that. So to find this person that you feel comfortable with, and that you can tell her everything, and then she starts to reject you, because she has another love interest. That's a very devastating thing, And
What you realize, I'm sorry, I was going to say.
No, but every time in that scene,
Yeah.
it's not just the scene, but it's also their performances of it.
Well, you make me realize that Charles talks about the hazing in college, but he was going through hazing all his life.
Oh, yeah.
And so there's a whole experience that he's had, and then finally finds someone that he loves, who actually, in the book we know, they get married and have 3 children. But in the story, we don't go to all that.
Right.
But we get to learn that she already had someone.
Yes.
And she was having a really different experience with him. So I've been given a signal that it's time for us to have our next performance. So Peculiar Grace with Will Liverman, accompanied by Brian Wagner. Got it right this time, right, Brian? Okay, good. Just want to make sure.
Was a boy of peculiar grace, a dangerous existence for a man of my race. A black boy from a lawless town where everyone carries a gun. I carried shame in a holster round my waist. A boy of peculiar grace, manhood lost and not found till now. Dreams that kept me awake, isolated by strange desires, half formed, not embraced, a graceful boy in a dangerous place. Alone, a subject of curiosity for the old folks to speculate. What's wrong with that boy? A stranger in my hometown, in oddity, the butt of a joke, a hurt that can't be erased. The South is no place for a boy with peculiar grace. I'll go north, I'll make my way. Nothing can stop me, no reason to stay. The South is no place for a boy with peculiar grace. Goodbye, Gippsland, goodbye, shame. Goodbye, nightmares, goodbye, pain. Goodbye, pistols in my mama's purse. Goodbye, pastors in the Baptist church. Goodbye, Daddy, and your good time women. Goodbye, honky-tonks and sinners in a... Say goodbye to Charles, baby. I'm finally free. I'm free. I'm free.
Thank you. Jim, why don't you come on over here?
Over
come on
here?
over. Let's not have an empty seat.
All right, thank
you. Yeah, okay, please. Thank you. Yeah. Welcome back. I didn't get to tell everybody about Porgy and Bess in 2019. The Gershwin's Porgy and Bess that you worked on that was so amazing and incredible that I was fortunate to see.
Oh, well, thank you.
So thank you. It was really a beautiful production. I should tell you that so you guys are going to get amazed. My cousin is John Bubbles, the original Sport and Life in Porgy and Bess. Oh, and so I assisted him in 1979, 1980 when he came to New York. So I got to hear all the stories.
Oh, my goodness.
The U.B. Blake stories, all the stories. So if you ever want to know those stories.
Okay.
Although we know a lot of them, but I just wanted to let you know that I'm really feeling this. And that Peculiar Grace song is very powerful because for those of us who grew up and had to deal with issues of sexuality and sensuality and all those things, it's a struggle that you really have to work on all your life. It's something that you don't really, it's not. And so I really appreciate the fact that you take this topic. Charles is really opening it up in a way that we can really understand it. The piece is about that, but it's about other things, about love and the community and the brothers and all those other things as well. And so you were lucky to work with a really wonderful co-director, right? Absolutely. You want to introduce her and tell us about her?
Absolutely. Well, bringing up Porgy and Bess, when I did Porgy and Bess at the Met in 2019, I asked the brilliant, wonderful choreographer Camille A. Brown to do the choreography for that production. And we got along so incredibly well that when we found out we were taking Terence and I found out we were taking Fire Shut Up in My Bones to the Met, making some revisions, expanding the show. It was, going to be a very different version. I asked if it would be okay to bring Camille Brown onto the show, not just as choreographer, but I believe in her so much that I wanted her to be my co-director on the show. So she said yes, and I was just so deeply honored to be working with her because I do think she is one of the, not only is she a great choreographer, but she's a wonderful storyteller.
Exactly.
Too. So I guess I'm introducing something.
Yeah.
So let me introduce. Yes.
But I was going to say, but in saying that, she's going to do Colored Girls. That's coming.
She is.
To Broadway,
she
is. She choreographed it at the Public. It was a wonderful production.
Absolutely.
And totally new way of seeing that piece. That is a classic piece. So,
absolutely.
So now,
okay. Now we'll yes.
Yeah,
so Camille. When we were preparing this production for the Met, we knew that there were some scenes that we were going to expand. And one of the scenes is the Grambling State scene, the fraternity scene. And she said, how about if I introduce, we had a small group of dancers in St. Louis. I think it was 4 or 5 dancers. And she said, how about 12 men for the Met? And I said,
so
great.
In St. Louis you had men, in St. Louis you had men and women?
It was mixed, yeah.
Okay, so she made this.
And she said, how about 12 men? I said, that sounds great. And she said, let me create a step dance scene, introduced with a stroll. And I said, go for it. And she created this absolutely wonderful thing that I think we were talking about earlier, that, to witness it, on the stage of the Met is really quite extraordinary.
Well, anyone who knows Greek life in African American colleges, historically black colleges, knows this is very much part of the the energy and the space, and you wait for those different frats to come out and do their thing. Like that's part of the acculturation and the culture.
Absolutely. So she has 12 extraordinary dancers in this show, and I think what she created was, literally a show-stopping event. And I think the only time I experienced anything at the Met where literally it was a show-stopping moment was when LaTanya Moore sang Serena's My Man's Gone Now in Porgy and Bess, and that was one of those crazy, crazy events. But what Camille created and what we saw last night at the opening was really, nothing short of remarkable. So I think you're going to see a video with Camille right now.
Yeah.
I really wanted to bring out and really lift up the idea of step dance, which is African American social dance. I wanted to make, as I say, I wanted to make the Grambling State a School Days moment, the movie School Days by Spike Lee. I just wanted to make it a moment where we see the pride, we see the pain, we see the joy, we see the sadness of going through a rite of passage for the young man, which is Charles. It's all a cappella. So there's a lot of listening involved, and I really wanted to create a rhythmical score, and that's what I think part of step dance is. So it not only has to sound good, it has to look good too. I'm gonna add my voice, and whatever that is in the moment, working with those dancers, that's what it is. If we had 12 different dancers, it would be a different step dance. So I bring my history, I bring my father, my grandfather, any men that are in my life, my little cousin who is not little anymore, he just graduated from college, but you know, seeing their lives growing up in the world as black men, how can I translate that through movement? I have images in my head that I see, and then there's this space that I leave that is very scary because I don't exactly know what I'm going to do when I walk in the room. And so when I walk in the room, it's important to really see who the people are, because that's going to inform the way I move and the choices that I make. So it's pretty much just riffing off of trying to get a sense of how far can I go, how hard can I make this, how percussive, how rhythmic. When we do rhythm, can we do polyrhythm? You know, who is comfortable using the canes? That's really how I work. It's interesting because the way I've felt about the step dance has taken a journey, because I am really excited about it, and I know that this is the first time step is going to be done at the Met, and to see these black bodies on stage doing that in front of this audience is thrilling. And I feel like there's a type of defiance and pride that they're gonna bring to it, and they have been bringing, that just adds. I'm nervous. I'm always nervous. This is my first time directing and co-directing, and it's been an overwhelming experience. I've thoroughly enjoyed working with James and working with Terence. I also know that we have to get ready for some pushback, because this is a black composer. This is the first time at the Met. This is a unique story to a black man, and some people will be uncomfortable by that. And we have to be ready for those conversations.
Wow, that's amazing.
So great.
It's incredible. I know your audiences must have gone crazy. You know, Charles, you know, you're talking in your book, you say these were the pretty boys, you know. I mean, so, you know, my dad was a Q, Omega, my brother-in-law was Alpha, so, you know, they were okay too. I'm GDI. Some people know what that means, so that's fine. We have some questions now that have come in. That was really spectacular, and congratulations on your opening night.
Thank
you.
you.
It must have been really exciting and amazing to have that experience of the Met going wild. Okay, so the first question for Charles is, how many of the characters in the opera and book are living? How many of them know that they figure in the opera book? And your mother, Chester, that's the question.
So I'm trying to think of the characters who actually show up in the opera. Uncle Paul is no longer.
Yes.
He died. But I think every other person on the stage is alive.
Okay, and your mother's name?
Her actual name is Freddie.
Okay, thank you.
But I had changed everybody's name in the book.
I just wanted you to say it out loud because she
Yes.
was so important in the story
Yes.
and important in your life. And I
Yes.
just wanted you, I mean, I'm sure someday she'll see this and say, oh, he remembered me. Okay, good. So my next question is for Terence. You mentioned in your New York Times profile that you don't want to be a token, you want to be a turnkey. Now, what does that mean to be the turnkey for other black composers in these major opera companies?
But it's not just black composers. It's for women. It's from people of all different races. You know, I mean, there's so many stories to be told, and it was interesting, man. Somebody asked me, said something about, you know, this opera being for black audiences, and I'm like, well, just by asking that question or putting that statement out, you're inferring that all of the other operas are not for us. You know what I mean? And I think that that's a ludicrous notion. You know, while Charles' story takes place in Gibson, Louisiana, my home state, very much the embodiment of a culture that I grew up in, the story itself is still a universal one. You know, it's about, you know, being betrayed by a family member, searching for love in your family and in the community. It's a universal story. So I think, you know, we have to throw away all of these other notions about what's reality and what could really survive on the stage at the Met. I think anything could, if it's done well and done at a high level, anything can be done on the Met stage, you know, and we have to really embrace that idea. Plus, at the same time, the opera world itself is always crying about ticket sales. You know what I mean? So what's the definition of insanity? You know, doing the same thing and expecting a different result. So I think people should look at what happened last night. You know, I was doing an interview for one of the television stations, you know, just walking into the Met, and the journalist said, he says, man, I never seen this much of a diverse audience here at the Met. And I'm like, hello? You know, I mean, you know, I've been saying this because this is the thing that really resonated with me. When we did Champion, my first opera in New Orleans, there was a gentleman who was 70-some years old, African-American gentleman. He walked up to me and he shook my hand and he said to me, if this is opera, I will come. And that blew me away. And the reason why it blew me away is because he saw himself on the stage. He remembered Emile Griffith. He knew that whole story about Emile and Benny Perrette. And he understood the culture behind boxing and the whole atmosphere of that world at the time, and seeing it on the stage really resonated in his life. So the same thing is happening with Charles's story now. There's so many people who have come up to me, and I know have probably come up to Jim and Charles and said, man, I know Billy. I grew up with Billy. You know, I know Uncle Paul. I have an Uncle Paul in my life, you know, and those things are the things that I get excited about. And I know that the Met and Peter Gelb, they're starting to understand that because they're going to do Anthony Davis's Malcolm X. You know, they've already announced that. So my thing is, I didn't want to be one and done.
Right.
You know, I want this to open a door for everybody to have an opportunity to tell their story.
I have to let that be in the space for us because we all are part of that and that movement and that. So my next question is for Jim, and I don't know if it's premature, but will this opera tour the country?
Yes. it's a co-production with the Lyric Opera of Chicago. So it'll be there in March. It'll be in at the Los Angeles Opera, I think in the fall of 2023. And there's already interest from other companies to take the piece, which is really extraordinary. It was the same thing that happened with Champion. You know, to Terence's point is, you have to create things. You have to do it if you want to change the culture. You want to change what your audience looks like. And you know, people have asked me, for example, in St. Louis. Wow, you know, was that difficult to do? And I said, well, no, we just do it. It becomes part of the DNA of what your organization is. You know, I have a platform to help create works, not just by African American composers, but by Asian composers, by women. And it's like, let's do it, and your audiences will change, and they have. So, I mean, I'm so thrilled that the Met has taken this on and is doing it. As Terence said, last night's audience was really just extraordinary to see such a diverse group of people. But you just have to do it. That's the thing.
Well, you know, you're making me realize, I mean, St. Louis is a spectacular city. I mean, you just had Andre DeShields there doing King Lear. I mean, there's just amazing things happening there. Don't make me leave New York, okay? I don't want to leave right now to move to St. Louis. I'm from Oklahoma.
I am too.
Oh, I'm an Okie from Muskogee.
Oh, Claremore. I grew up in a small town.
Grew up in Tulsa, so
there
I
you
know
go.
this,
Okay.
and this character. And so all this, though, to say, so now we have a moment where I want to ask you if there are questions that you want to ask each other that you haven't thought about asking. Give you a moment.
That's a good question.
That's a good question.
Yeah, I think, I've already asked Charles. I remember because when we did it in St. Louis, man, we didn't really allow him to come to rehearsals or anything.
They didn't do it this time either. I don't know what he said.
Oh wait, why?
They never let me know anything.
Really?
But I wanted it to be a surprise for him in St. Louis. This time it wasn't me. That was Peter Gill. That was me. It wasn't me. But so after man, listen, you're doing a story about somebody's life, and then all of a sudden the night of premiere, you just have this immense amount of fear. Like, oh man,
Is it going to work?
Yeah,
Is
what
it
if
true?
this dude really
Is it
hates
gonna be
this,
open?
man?
Yeah, exactly.
So I had already asked him my question if we were cool, and he goes, sure. And I love his statement that you said to me about that. You said, oh yeah, I realize that's not me anymore. And I love that because I wanted that to resonate in the ears and the minds of a lot of young people who may be going through something. Mm-hmm. Because that to me is the reason why we do this story. And if there's one thing that I would like to say, that's the reason why we did it. We always want to do stories about people who are no longer with us. This guy is extremely successful, he's brilliant, and I kept saying to myself, why not do his story and give him his flowers while he's here? And just his success is a testament to his resilience and a statement that you can overcome anything, and that's the thing you want young people to really understand. Because while we're sitting here, talking about this production and, really having a great time talking about the opening night, we have to remember there are people out there struggling.
There are young people going through what
suffering.
Charles, the character, Charles, the person, went through. One of the things that was stunning to me, seeing the opera, but then reading the book, the thing that is really important to understand is how resourceful Charles was. So I talked about the airplane thing, but the thing I really wanted to talk about was when he went to Atlanta. He went to Atlanta to interview to get a job in the newspaper, and he wanted to work at the New York Times. And there were no interview spaces left. So Charles, what'd you do?
I said, I understand. I'm going to sit here until someone doesn't show up.
Right.
And I sat there for 6 hours pretending to read the newspaper and reading the same story over and over and over and over and over again. And they just basically forgot that I was still there. And when they were packing up to leave, I was still sitting there. And they said, fine, we'll interview you.
Tell the real part.
And then they said, okay, they did it. But I had sat there for 6 hours. So I had, it was like the best recon mission ever. So every time someone would interview, I hear the questions they asked and the answers they gave, and every time they got up and left, they talk about them.
That's why you didn't want
so
to hear
I said, okay, that's what they want to hear. So when I got my chance to interview, I knew, they said, what kind of books have you been reading? I already had my 3. I knew how to answer that, and I was, and I was ready. And so I gave the best, most glorious interview ever in the history of, job fairs. And they said, oh my God, you're so impressive, but we don't even have a graphics internship. I said, okay, fine. And I was genuinely excited and appreciative that the New York Times had told this little boy from a town of 900 people that they were impressed with him. Genuinely, that was all I needed.
Right.
And I came back the next day and I said, I gotta make up time. Because I wasted all my time yesterday sitting over there playing that game with the New York Times. And everywhere I went, they said, oh, the New York Times is looking for you. And the only thing I could think of was that I had accidentally picked up something and put it in my bag. Like, I have stolen the pins from the New York Times, and they are looking. So I go back to the New York Times booth and they say to me, oh my God, you were so impressive that we didn't have a graphics internship, but we called back to New York last night and we made one.
Wow.
And I became the first graphics intern at the New York Times.
And one of the youngest.
I eventually became the youngest department head they'd ever had.
Exactly.
They said there was one other guy who was the same age as me who had one employee in Paris. He was a Paris bureau chief. So I don't know if that was a department head, but I was the one with the department in the New York Times building in New York, and that was the youngest.
So I just want to thank you for letting the fire come out of your bones.
Thank you.
And Terence, I want to thank you for the incredible music, and James, I want to thank you for the vision. I want to thank Will Liverman and his amazing pianist, Paggern, for a wonderful, wonderful time. And now we're going to bring back Novella Ford. Can we clap for you, Novella?
Why not? I was going to say the same thing, which is really thank you all for being so impressive, each and every single one of you. I want to bring a little bit of the audience to you all, since it can be a little weird sitting in an empty auditorium and not know, but there were lots of applause, just so you know. Some of the things that were said: always enjoy Camille's work. All right, Noops, wow, great. Next week, I cannot wait to come soon enough. Terence always drops knowledge. Applause to you, Mr. Terence Blanchard. Cussing at the Met, we doing that now? And bravo, bravo, bravo. While we also, I just wanted to let people know, Casey Lemons couldn't join us tonight, and Camila could not join us tonight either, but definitely want to, again, bring up those women who are in the play, who are in the opera, who are so important, like Latonia Moore and Angel Blue. If we could just give them a round of applause as well. And tonight we decided to focus on Charles specifically, and so I also want to mention Walter Russell III, who plays Charles Baby, the younger Charles Blow, who was amazing. And so if he's watching, or if any family members of his are watching, please know that, oh my goodness, we can't wait to see what else he brings to the stage. So let's give him a round of applause.
Walter. Yep.
And I do have one little question, which is, what was it like to work with such a young phenom?
First of all, he is amazing. He's amazing. I mean, I remember the first day, Camille does this movement thing with the entire cast. She gets them up and starts to dance, and then she separates them, then she creates almost like a dance battle. Man, Walter started dancing, and they created a circle around this guy, and he is phenomenal. And when we got to start, when Jim started to actually block out the show, the opera, man, it was amazing watching it. He never missed an entrance, right?
No, he is so on top of it and so charismatic, and he's got so many ideas.
Yes.
And he is so reliable too, but he just brought all of us such joy because of his spirit and his professionalism, and it just brought tears to my eyes last night when he came out for his curtain call.
Right.
And
he's still a kid.
And he's still a kid, and I forget that.
He's still a kid.
They're looking for a Michael Jackson.
That's right. Yeah, exactly.
Look, but that's the reason why I think it's important to state he's still a kid.
Yeah.
Because in rehearsals, he was very professional and everything, but then you start to forget him and the guy that's covering him, Caleb. Man, they're around the same age. Next thing you know, they're playing, running around. We got a little 30-minute break. They're off doing their thing. And when it's time to come back, they're like, okay, cool.
Yeah.
What are we doing?
Right.
I loved it.
Thank you. Thank you so much for answering that question. That's such a beautiful way for us to end. Again, support opera in your local community. Support opera at the Metropolitan Opera, specifically this particular work, Fire Shut Up in My Bones. You can find out more information again at metopera.org, Schomburg Center at schomburgcenter.org. Please have an amazing evening, and we hope that you will tune in again for additional programs in October. Have a great evening. Good night.
Night. Thank you.